Welcome to the English Pod community. I'm Blake, your host, and today we have an exciting episode that will help you improve your English listening and writing skills. Are you ready to gain more confidence when speaking English? Do you struggle to express yourself fluently in real-life situations? Well, you're in the right place. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to build confidence in English and improve your fluency. This will be especially helpful if you want to speak with ease, whether it's at work, while traveling, or just socializing with friends. And remember, the more you practice listening to real-life stories, the more your listening and writing skills will improve. So, if you're enjoying this episode, don't forget to hit that like button. Let's begin by thinking about a situation where you had to speak in English. Maybe you had a conversation with someone at work, or perhaps you had to give a presentation. How did you feel? Did you feel nervous, unsure of what to say, or were you confident? I remember a time when I was in a meeting with my colleagues. I had to explain a new project we were starting, and I was speaking in English, which wasn't my first language. At first, I felt nervous because I thought I might make a mistake, or they might not understand me. But then I took a deep breath and reminded myself that everyone makes mistakes, and the key is to keep going. What about you? Do you find it challenging to speak confidently even when you know the words? Maybe you feel unsure or are afraid of making mistakes. That's something many people experience, but with practice, confidence grows. You can do it. It's all about taking small steps to feel more comfortable and not letting the fear of mistakes hold you back. Let's look at a few practical tips for building confidence in English. One tip is to practice speaking English every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Try talking about simple topics like your day or what you had for lunch. These little daily practices add up. And before you know it, you'll be speaking with more confidence. Another tip is to focus on the message, not the mistakes. It's easy to get caught up in trying to say everything perfectly. But remember, communication is about sharing ideas. When you're speaking, focus on what you want to say, not how perfect your grammar is. People care more about what you're saying than if you make a small mistake. Let's talk about a story to illustrate this. A few years ago, I was at a conference, and there was a man named Daniel who had recently moved to the country. His English wasn't perfect, but he spoke clearly and with confidence. One day, during a group discussion, Daniel said something that wasn't grammatically perfect, but everyone understood him. And guess what? It didn't matter. His ability to express himself was more important than his grammar, and he gained the respect of everyone in the room. So what can we learn from Daniel's experience? It's that confidence comes from focusing on the message and not letting small mistakes stop you. Even when you're unsure, you can still communicate effectively. Another story I want to share is about a time when I was teaching a student named Sarah. Sarah was nervous about speaking English because she thought her accent was too strong, and she often made mistakes. But we worked together on her confidence, and I encouraged her to speak up more, even if she was unsure. Slowly, she became more confident, and over time, her fluency improved. She stopped worrying about making mistakes and focused more on communicating her thoughts. Eventually, Sarah even began to lead group discussions in class. Building confidence takes time, but with consistent practice, you'll see improvement. It's also helpful to surround yourself with people who encourage you, whether that's a teacher, a friend, or even a language partner. Being around people who support you will help you feel more comfortable speaking up. So, what should you take away from today's episode? Building confidence in English is all about practice. Focusing on your message and not worrying too much about making mistakes. With time and patience, you'll improve your fluency and feel more confident in any situation. Imagine you're meeting someone named Jack. Jack speaks English fluently, and you've been friends for a while. He's been helping you with your English, and you've been practicing together for a few weeks now. One day, you and Jack decide to meet for coffee, and you speak in English the entire time. At first, you might feel nervous, but as the conversation flows, you start to feel more comfortable. You might make a mistake here and there, but Jack encourages you, and that makes you feel more confident to keep speaking. The key takeaway here is to find someone who is supportive. Whether it's a friend like Jack or a teacher, having someone who listens to you and encourages you will make you feel more at ease. Practicing with others helps you get used to speaking in English, and over time, it becomes more natural. Now, let's talk about something that many people find helpful: speaking out loud even when you're by yourself. This might sound a little strange, but it works. You can practice speaking English by reading aloud, repeating sentences, or even talking to yourself about your day. This helps your brain get used to forming sentences and speaking more fluidly. I remember a time when I was in a situation where I needed to speak English, but there were no friends around to practice with. So I started talking to myself while I was walking to work. I would describe what I saw, what I was feeling, and what I had planned for the day. The more I did this, the more comfortable I became with speaking in English, even when there was no one else around. Speaking out loud on your own can also help you get over the fear of speaking in public. It's like a rehearsal. The more you practice, the easier it will be to speak when you need to. It might feel weird at first, but trust me, it really helps. Another great way to build confidence is to set small, achievable goals. For example, you can start by setting a goal to speak for just 2 minutes every day in English. Once you get comfortable with that, you can increase the time. Or you can aim to learn and use 5 new words each week in conversations. These small goals make the process of improving your English feel more manageable, and they help you track your progress. Think about someone like Emily, who had a goal of speaking for 5 minutes every day in English. She started small by speaking about her favorite hobbies and then worked her way up to talking about more complex topics. Over time, Emily became much more confident, and she was able to speak English fluently in meetings at work. Setting those small goals really helped her stay motivated and focused. You can do the same thing. Start small and celebrate your achievements. Every time you speak in English, even if it's just for a minute, you're taking a step forward. 1 more tip I want to share is to watch and listen to English content that interests you. You don't have to watch movies or shows if you're not interested in them. You can listen to podcasts or read articles on topics that you enjoy. Whether it's technology, sports, or cooking, find something that makes learning fun for you. Let's say you like reading about new technology. There's a podcast I enjoy where they discuss the latest gadgets and innovations. Every time I listen, I pick up new vocabulary and get more comfortable with how the language sounds in different contexts. The more you expose yourself to English in a way that's fun and interesting, the more your confidence will grow. And here's a real-life example. I once met a guy named Chris who loved technology. He wasn't very confident speaking English, but he decided to start listening to tech podcasts. He would listen during his daily commute, and over time, he began using some of the phrases and words he heard in his conversations with others. Now, Chris speaks confidently about technology and is comfortable discussing it in English, all thanks to his daily practice. The key here is to find something that excites you. When you're passionate about something, it doesn't feel like studying. It feels like having fun while learning. As you can see, building confidence in English is not about perfection. It's about taking small steps, staying consistent, and focusing on communication rather than worrying about mistakes. Whether you practice with friends, speak out loud on your own, set achievable goals, or engage with content you enjoy, every little, bit helps you become more confident. Imagine that you're in a meeting at work, just like Jack, who's an engineer at a tech company. Jack was nervous when he first started speaking in English because, although he was quite skilled, he wasn't used to speaking at work. He'd write his emails and reports without any problem. But when it came to meetings, his heart would race, and he would second-guess every word he said. Does that sound familiar? I've been there too. At first, I was also nervous to speak in meetings or make presentations in English. But over time, I realized that the key is to focus on the message, not on perfection. So what did Jack do? Well, he started by setting small, realistic goals. He began by speaking up just once in each meeting. It could be something small like, "I agree with that point," or "I think we should consider this option." Slowly, he built his confidence in speaking up, and after a few weeks, he was able to speak more often, contributing more to discussions without feeling nervous. You might be thinking, that sounds easy, but it's really about overcoming that initial fear of speaking. You can do the same. You don't have to dive straight into complex conversations. Start small, like Jack did. It could be as simple as starting a conversation with a colleague or making small talk with a friend in English. The more you practice, the easier it becomes. And remember, every time you speak, you're building that confidence and working towards fluency. Now, let's talk about the importance of listening. Listening is just as important as speaking when it comes to building confidence. And no, it's not just about listening to podcasts or audiobooks. Although those are helpful, it's about really paying attention to how people speak in real conversations. You can listen to how they pause, how they stress certain words, and how they use different tones to express emotions. Understanding the flow of conversation is key to building your confidence in English. Take Sarah, for example. Sarah is a teacher, and her job requires her to communicate in English every day. At first, Sarah didn't feel confident in speaking English because she thought her pronunciation wasn't good enough. She would listen to recordings of herself and notice every little mistake. But one day, she decided to focus on listening to other people instead of criticizing her own voice. She listened to how others spoke, paid attention to how they expressed their thoughts, and started imitating the way they communicated. By doing this, Sarah gained a better understanding of how to use the language more naturally. She practiced repeating what she heard and began to feel more comfortable speaking without worrying about making mistakes. Over time, Sarah's confidence grew, and now she's comfortable speaking with anyone in English. You can try this too. Choose a conversation you like. Maybe it's a podcast, a video, or even a conversation with a friend, and really listen to it. Pay attention to how the speakers pronounce words, their rhythm, and their tone. This will help you understand how to sound more natural when you speak. Another powerful way to build confidence is through repetition. The more you practice, the easier it gets. Think of it like learning to ride a bike. When you first try, you might fall a few times. But the more you practice, the more confident you become. It's the same with English. You need to practice speaking, listening, and even writing every day. Repetition helps your brain get used to the language, and soon you'll start speaking without even thinking about it. Let's think about Mike, who loves playing basketball. He was trying to improve his English for work, but he didn't feel confident about speaking in meetings or giving presentations. So he decided to set aside time each day to practice speaking about his favorite topic, basketball. He would talk to his friends, colleagues, or even record himself discussing the latest games. Over time, Mike found that he could talk about basketball in English with ease. Not only did this make him feel more confident, but it also helped him build a larger vocabulary. Now, when Mike has to speak in meetings, he feels much more comfortable because he has built that confidence through repetition. Why does repetition work so well? It's because it helps you become familiar with the language. The more you say something, the more it becomes part of your vocabulary. The more you hear certain phrases, the more naturally they come to you when you need them. And before you know it, you're speaking without even having to think about the words. Another strategy for building confidence is to challenge yourself with new situations. Put yourself in situations where you have to speak English, even if it makes you feel a little uncomfortable. I'm not saying you should do this every day, but occasionally stepping out of your comfort zone can help you grow. Let's talk about Laura, a software developer who had been living in an English-speaking country for a while. Despite living there, she was still nervous about speaking English with her colleagues at work. Laura had a great understanding of the language, but she lacked the confidence to speak up in meetings. She realized that one of the reasons she felt nervous was because she wasn't exposing herself to English in different contexts. So she made a decision to start challenging herself. Laura began speaking in English at the grocery store, ordering coffee, and even participating in online discussions about topics she was interested in, like technology. At first, it was uncomfortable, but over time, she got used to it. Laura found that the more she exposed herself to real-life conversations, the more confident she became. This strategy works because it forces you to use English in real-life situations. The more real-life exposure you get, the easier it will be to speak confidently in any context. So challenge yourself to speak with new people, order your food in English, or talk about your hobbies with others. You'll find that your confidence grows naturally. Another technique for building confidence is to embrace mistakes. Yes, I know. This sounds counterintuitive, but listen closely. Mistakes are an essential part of the learning process. Think about it. When you were a child, you didn't learn to walk without falling down a few times, right? The same principle applies to language learning. Mistakes are simply part of the journey, and they actually help you improve. Let's look at Tom's experience. Tom, a lawyer, had been practicing English for years, but he was always afraid of making mistakes. He would avoid speaking in front of others, thinking that his mistakes would make him look unprofessional. But one day, during a conference, Tom realized that everyone else was making mistakes too. He realized that the best way to learn and improve was to embrace those mistakes instead of fearing them. From that moment on, Tom started participating more in discussions, even when he was unsure. His confidence grew because he wasn't afraid to make mistakes anymore, and he learned from each one. This mindset shift is crucial for building confidence in English. It's okay to make mistakes. In fact, they're a sign that you're trying and improving. So embrace your mistakes and learn from them. They will help you become more confident in the long run. Building confidence in English isn't an overnight process. It takes time, effort, and consistent practice. But the more you expose yourself to the language, practice speaking, and challenge yourself, the more confident you'll become. It's all about taking those small steps every day and not giving up, even when things feel difficult. So, get started today. Whether it's speaking with a friend, listening to an English podcast, or reading out loud, every little bit helps you build that confidence. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. We're all in this together, working to improve our English. Let's continue our journey into building confidence in English. The key to becoming fluent and confident is practicing regularly and putting yourself in situations where you can grow. But what happens when you feel stuck? What can you do when you think you've hit a wall in your learning process? Well, it's completely normal to face those moments, but the most important thing is to keep pushing forward. Let's explore more ways to boost your confidence and get past those barriers. Take the example of Harry. Harry works as an architect in a global firm. He knew English was important for his job, but he always felt a bit intimidated when it came to speaking with clients. His vocabulary was good, and he understood the language, but when it came time to speak, especially in meetings, he'd freeze up. His fear of making a mistake or sounding wrong often held him back. So, what did he do? Harry realized that he needed a change in his approach. He decided to break down his big fear of speaking into smaller, more manageable steps. Harry started by listening to recordings of professional English conversations related to his work. He listened carefully to how others explained concepts, how they used certain technical vocabulary, and how they made their points clear. This helped him understand how to communicate his thoughts in a more organized and professional way. Harry also took it a step further by recording himself speaking about his daily work. He'd talk about the projects he was working on and explain them in English, just as if he was in a meeting. At first, it felt awkward, but as he practiced, he grew more comfortable. Over time, his fear started to fade, and he was able to speak in meetings with greater ease. Eventually, Harry felt confident enough to speak in front of clients without feeling nervous or second-guessing himself. Now, how can you apply this to your situation? Whether you're preparing for a job interview, a presentation, or just trying to improve your day-to-day conversations, the same strategy works. Start by practicing with familiar topics, things you already know well. If you're a student, practice talking about your studies. Or if you work in a certain field, speak about things that are familiar to you. You'll feel less pressure because you're not trying to explain something new. The more you practice, the more fluent you become. Another great way to build confidence is by learning how to structure your thoughts. Have you ever been in a conversation and suddenly lost track of what you wanted to say? Maybe you couldn't find the right words, and it made you feel nervous or self-conscious. I've had that happen too, especially when I was speaking in English with people who were more experienced. It's frustrating, isn't it? But the good news is that you can improve this. One effective method is to practice organizing your thoughts before you speak. This might sound like a simple step, but it's incredibly powerful. When you're in a conversation, instead of jumping into the conversation right away, pause for a moment and think about what you want to say. Try to outline your main points quickly in your mind. This will help you speak more clearly and confidently. Let's take Emma, for example. Emma is a marketing manager in a large company, and she frequently has to present ideas to her team. At first, she struggled to find the right words during her presentations. She often went off track or forgot important details, which made her feel less confident. Emma realized that she could improve by organizing her ideas beforehand. She started making small outlines of what she wanted to say. She'd write down the key points and even practice them aloud. By doing this, Emma felt much more in control during her presentations. She knew what she was going to say, which made her feel confident and helped her speak more fluently. You can try this too. Whether you're having a conversation, making a presentation, or even writing an email, planning your key points can really make a difference. And remember, the more you do this, the more natural it will become. Now let's talk about a different way to improve your fluency. Speaking with others. It's one thing to practice by yourself, but speaking with other people in real time is one of the most effective ways to improve. When you have someone to speak with, you practice responding quickly, thinking on your feet, and using English in real-world situations. Think about Liam. Liam is a teacher who used to be afraid of making mistakes while speaking in English with his colleagues. He would avoid group conversations because he was worried about making errors. But after a few months, Liam realized that he wasn't improving by avoiding those situations. So he decided to join an English conversation club in his city. Jonas, first, it was awkward. He wasn't used to talking with others in English, and he felt nervous. But as he practiced more, his confidence grew. Liam started to enjoy these conversations and felt more comfortable speaking with his colleagues. Eventually, he no longer feared making mistakes. He saw them as part of the process. His fluency improved, and so did his confidence. This story highlights something important. Engaging in conversations with others will push you to use the language more naturally. It helps you improve your listening and speaking skills, which builds confidence. So, if you're not already speaking with others in English, consider finding a conversation partner. You can practice online or look for local groups where you can meet people to speak with. Another great confidence booster is self-reflection. After practicing or having a conversation, take a moment to reflect on what went well and what could be improved. This can help you see your progress over time and give you the motivation to keep going. You can ask yourself questions like, did I feel more comfortable this time compared to last time? Or, what new vocabulary did I use today that I didn't know before? This process will help you track your growth and remind you that you're constantly improving. For example, let's look at Daniel, who works in customer service. Daniel always found it difficult to speak with customers in English because he worried that he wouldn't understand their questions or that he might not be able to help them correctly. But instead of focusing on his mistakes, Daniel started to reflect on each conversation. After each customer call, he would take 5 minutes to think about the interaction. He'd write down any new phrases or words he learned, and he'd remind himself of the areas where he felt confident. This practice made him realize how much progress he was actually making, and over time, Daniel felt more confident in his ability to handle customer calls in English. You can try self-reflection too. After any practice or conversation, ask yourself how you did and what you can improve. Celebrate the small wins, even if you think you didn't speak perfectly. Remember, every bit of progress counts. Building confidence in English isn't a quick fix. It's a journey. It takes consistent effort and a willingness to step outside of your comfort zone. The good news is that each step you take, no matter how small, brings you closer to fluency. So, keep practicing, keep speaking, and keep reflecting on your progress. Think of it like building a muscle. At first, it might feel difficult or slow, but with regular practice, you'll get stronger and more confident. Before you know it, you'll be speaking English with ease, whether in casual conversations or professional settings. Don't be afraid to challenge yourself, make mistakes, and continue learning every day. You've got this. Let's keep moving forward on the path to confidence. You might be wondering, but how do I deal with nerves? What if I feel anxious when speaking? Well, anxiety is a common barrier to language learning, and it's completely natural to feel nervous when you're speaking a second language. But here's the thing. The more you expose yourself to real-life situations, the less power those nerves will have. Overcoming anxiety comes down to practice, patience, and changing your mindset. Let's think about Sarah for a moment. Sarah has a passion for photography, and she's always wanted to travel and photograph places all over the world. However, there was one problem. Sarah had always been nervous about speaking in English, especially when talking to people she didn't know. Whenever she traveled, she avoided speaking to locals because she was scared of making mistakes. But then, something clicked for her. She realized that photography was her passion, and that passion could help her overcome her fear of speaking. Sarah began to combine her love for photography with language practice. Every time she traveled to a new place, she would take her camera and practice talking to people. At first, she felt shy, but she started asking simple questions about local landmarks, people, and customs in English. She would ask about places to take photos, or what the best spots were for sunset views. Slowly but surely, Sarah's confidence grew. She was no longer afraid of making mistakes because her love for photography took the focus off the fear. She began to enjoy the conversations, and her English improved through real-world interactions. Sarah's experience teaches us a valuable lesson. Try to find a connection between your passion and your language practice. This helps shift the focus away from your fear of making mistakes and puts it on something you enjoy. Think about something you're passionate about, whether it's your job, a hobby, or a cause you care about, and use that as a gateway to practice English. And remember, every conversation is an opportunity to improve. For example, take the case of Mark, a lawyer who needed to speak English with international clients. In the beginning, Mark was terrified of mispronouncing legal terms and sounding unprofessional. But he realized that his clients were there to understand his ideas, not judge his accent or grammar. So he started to focus less on being perfect and more on delivering his message clearly. Mark practiced speaking English during mock legal discussions with his colleagues, and he even recorded himself explaining complex legal terms. Over time, his confidence grew, and so did his fluency. Now, when Mark speaks to clients, he's not worried about mistakes anymore. Instead, he's focused on ensuring his ideas come across effectively. If you're ever unsure about your progress, think of Mark's story and remember that language learning is about communication, not perfection. Being able to express yourself clearly is much more important than getting every word right. And remember, no one speaks a second language perfectly, so don't be too hard on yourself. Another way to build confidence is to embrace different learning styles. While some people learn better by reading, others may find that listening or speaking is more effective. One learning style that's particularly helpful for building fluency is active listening. When you actively listen to native speakers, whether it's through podcasts, interviews, or even casual conversations, you start to pick up on common expressions, slang, and pronunciation patterns. This helps you sound more natural and confident when you speak. Take Jenny, for example. Jenny is an English teacher who started by listening to podcasts in English while driving to work. At first, she didn't understand everything, but she kept at it, and over time, she became more familiar with common phrases and idioms used in everyday conversations. As Jenny's understanding of natural English improved, she found it easier to use these phrases in her own speech. She also started listening to audiobooks in English, which allowed her to hear longer, more complex sentences. Jenny's fluency improved dramatically as she started to incorporate more natural speech patterns into her vocabulary. The key takeaway here is to expose yourself to the language as much as possible and focus on how native speakers use English in real life. Active listening can also improve your pronunciation. When you hear the way native speakers stress certain words, pause, or change their intonation, you learn how to sound more natural. Try mimicking these patterns when you speak, and over time, your confidence will increase. Remember, confidence isn't just about the words you use, it's also about how you say them. Now, let's talk about something else that's crucial for building confidence: positive reinforcement. When you notice your progress, take a moment to congratulate yourself. Many learners get frustrated because they feel like they haven't made enough progress, but small victories matter. It's easy to overlook the progress you've made because you're focused on where you want to go. But every time you learn a new word, use a phrase correctly, or hold a conversation, you're moving forward. Take the story of James. James is a software developer who learned English as a second language. Early on, he found it difficult to speak in meetings, especially because there were so many technical terms to remember. But every time he successfully communicated a complex idea in English, he would take a moment to recognize his accomplishment. It wasn't about being perfect, it was about progress. Over time, James found that he was more confident in his English because he had trained his mind to recognize his improvements, no matter how small. This mindset shift helped him stop focusing on mistakes and start celebrating his successes. So, try doing the same. After each practice session, give yourself a pat on the back. Don't just focus on what you need to improve. but also recognize the progress you've made. The more you acknowledge your progress, the more confident you'll feel. We've talked a lot about practice and how it helps build confidence, but there's one more important factor that contributes to your success: your environment. If you're learning English in a stressful or uninspiring environment, it might be harder to stay motivated. On the other hand, if you surround yourself with positive influences, whether it's supportive friends, mentors, or an English-speaking community, you'll find that it becomes much easier to stay confident. Consider Olivia's experience. Olivia works as a manager in a global company and often has to communicate with her international team in English. In the beginning, she struggled to find the right words and felt intimidated by her colleagues. But Olivia realized that she needed to create a more positive learning environment for herself. She started listening to English podcasts during her daily commute, joined online groups where she could practice speaking, and sought out colleagues who were willing to help her improve. Olivia found that when she immersed herself in a supportive environment, her confidence grew exponentially. She felt more comfortable speaking because she knew that people around her wanted to help her succeed. You can create a similar environment for yourself. Whether it's joining a language exchange group, finding a conversation partner, or immersing yourself in English language media, having positive influences around you will boost your confidence. Your environment can play a huge role in how you perceive your own abilities. Let's continue the journey of building confidence in English, and this time, let's focus more on how to overcome those feelings of doubt and fear that so many learners face. Imagine this. You're in a meeting or at a social gathering, and someone asks you a question in English. Instantly, you feel your heart race, your hands get a little sweaty, and you start worrying about whether you'll say the wrong thing. I've been there before, and I'm sure you have too. But here's the secret. Every successful English speaker has gone through this same process. They've faced those moments of fear, doubt, and hesitation, but they didn't let those feelings stop them. Take Daniel's story. Daniel is an engineer from the UK who moved to the United States to work with a team of international colleagues. When Daniel first started working, he felt nervous about speaking up in meetings, especially when discussing technical topics. There were times when he felt unsure of how to explain complex ideas, or when he couldn't find the right words. But over time, he realized that his colleagues weren't judging him for his accent or occasional mistakes. They were more focused on the quality of his ideas. One day, during a team discussion, Daniel decided to speak up more confidently. Even though he didn't have all the right words, he said, "I think we should focus on improving the system's efficiency, even though we might face some challenges along the way. It's going to take time, but the benefits will be worth it." His colleague, Sarah, nodded and said, "I agree, Daniel. Your idea is really clear." That moment made Daniel realize something important. It wasn't about being perfect in English. It was about expressing his ideas clearly and confidently. Daniel's story shows us that the fear of speaking English is often rooted in the idea that we have to speak perfectly. But that's not true. The most important thing is to get your point across. When you stop focusing on making everything perfect and instead focus on what you're trying to communicate, you'll feel more confident in yourself and your English skills. So, whenever you feel that rush of nerves, remind yourself that your ideas are just as important as your language skills. And that's what people really care about. Now, let's dive deeper into the idea of making mistakes. For many learners, the fear of making mistakes is a huge barrier to speaking English confidently. But the truth is, making mistakes is a natural part of the learning process. Everyone, no matter how fluent they are, makes mistakes when they speak. The key is to view mistakes as opportunities to learn and grow, rather than as something to avoid. Let me tell you about Jack, a teacher from Canada. Jack had been living in Japan for a few years, teaching English to Japanese students. He had always been a perfectionist, and when he first arrived, he was afraid to speak Japanese because he didn't want to make mistakes. But one day, he had to go to a store to buy a new phone. He practiced the phrases he needed. But when he got there, he ended up saying, "I want a phone to make a call for my job," instead of, "I want a phone for work." The salesperson didn't quite understand at first, but she smiled and said, "Ah, you mean a phone for your job." Jack was embarrassed at first, but then he realized something important. The salesperson understood what he was trying to say, and they were able to have a conversation. Jack's experience teaches us an important lesson. Making mistakes is not the end of the world. In fact, making mistakes is one of the best ways to learn and improve. Jack was able to continue his conversation in Japanese, and his confidence grew from that experience. He no longer feared making mistakes because he saw them as chances to improve his language skills. So, the next time you make a mistake, instead of feeling discouraged, think about what you can learn from it and how it can help you grow. Another way to build confidence is by focusing on your strengths. You've probably heard the saying, "Focus on what you're good at." This applies to language learning as well. It's easy to get caught up in areas where we struggle, like grammar or pronunciation, but it's important to remember what you already do well. Are you good at listening? Do you have a great vocabulary? Do you find it easy to connect with people in English? Whatever it is, recognize those strengths and use them to your advantage. Let's look at Emily's journey. Emily is a nurse who works in an English-speaking hospital. When she first started, she was worried about her English because she didn't have much experience with medical terminology in English. But Emily was a fantastic listener, and she quickly picked up on the common phrases and expressions used in the hospital. She focused on her listening skills and gradually started speaking more confidently with patients and colleagues. Emily's strength was her ability to listen and understand, so she used that to her advantage and didn't let her fear of medical vocabulary hold her back. If you feel unsure about your speaking, take a moment to think about what you're good at. Maybe you're great at reading and understanding English articles, or maybe you're really good at writing emails. Whatever it is, take pride in those strengths and use them to help you feel more confident. Over time, you'll see that your overall language skills improve when you build on your strengths. Next, let's talk about how to stay motivated on this confidence-building journey. Motivation is something that comes and goes for many learners. Some days you feel excited and eager to practice, while other days you might feel discouraged or tired. But one of the keys to building long-term confidence is finding ways to stay motivated every day, even when you don't feel like practicing. Here's a strategy that worked for Peter. Peter is an entrepreneur who moved from the UK to the US to start his own business. When he first arrived, he was excited to learn English, but over time, he became overwhelmed by the pressure of starting a new business and felt like he didn't have enough time to practice his language skills. To stay motivated, Peter decided to set small, achievable goals. Instead of telling himself he needed to become fluent in English in 6 months, he focused on practicing English for just 10 minutes a day. He would listen to a podcast during his commute, review a few new words, or write a short journal entry in English. The key to Peter's success was setting small, realistic goals. These daily practices didn't feel overwhelming, and they kept him motivated to continue learning. Over time, those 10 minutes a day added up, and Peter found himself becoming more confident in his English. He was no longer focused on the pressure to be perfect. He just concentrated on small, achievable steps that helped him improve every day. You can use the same strategy. Set small goals for yourself, whether it's learning 5 new words each week, having 1 conversation in English every day, or listening to 1 podcast episode per day. These small, consistent actions will help you stay motivated and confident in your language skills. One more important tip is to celebrate your successes, no matter how small they may seem. As you build your confidence, take time to recognize your achievements. Maybe you had a conversation in English without worrying about making mistakes. Or maybe you watched an English movie without subtitles and understood most of it. Celebrate these moments and remind yourself that you're making progress. Celebrating your successes helps you stay positive and motivated to continue your language learning journey. Let's think about Alex, who works as a financial analyst. Alex had been learning English for a few years, but still felt unsure when speaking at work. One day, he gave a presentation to his colleagues in English, and despite a few mistakes, it went really well. Afterward, Alex took a moment to reflect on what went well and celebrated the fact that he had been able to speak confidently in front of others. That small victory boosted his self-esteem and gave him the confidence to continue improving his English. As you go along your own journey, don't forget to celebrate the small wins. These celebrations will help you keep a positive mindset and remind you that you're making steady progress. Remember, confidence in English doesn't come overnight. It's a gradual process that requires practice, patience, and a positive mindset. As you continue to practice, expose yourself to real-life situations and embrace your mistakes, your confidence will naturally grow. Keep going, keep speaking, and trust that every step you take brings you closer to becoming a more confident English speaker. Building confidence in English can sometimes feel like a long journey, but the rewards are absolutely worth it. You may be wondering, how can I keep going when I don't feel confident? Or, what if I make a mistake in front of people? These are the kinds of questions many English learners ask, and today, we're going to explore how you can keep building that confidence even when you feel uncertain. Let me introduce you to John, a man who struggled with speaking English for a long time. John is an architect who moved to the United States from Canada for a job opportunity. While he was great at reading architectural plans and writing emails in English, he felt uneasy whenever it came to speaking, especially during meetings with clients. The fear of saying something wrong often held him back from expressing his ideas fully, but over time, John realized that his clients weren't interested in how perfect his English was. They were more focused on his ideas and the work he was doing, so he started to change his approach. Instead of thinking, I have to speak perfectly, John began thinking, what I need to communicate is more important than how perfectly I speak. He gave himself permission to make mistakes. He focused on making his ideas clear and being open about the fact that English wasn't his first language. One day, during a meeting with a potential client, John had to explain a new design concept. He wasn't sure if his vocabulary was perfect, but he described his ideas confidently. The client was impressed, not because John spoke perfectly, but because he clearly explained his vision. That moment was a breakthrough for John. He learned that confidence doesn't come from perfection. It comes from believing in what you have to offer, even if your language skills aren't flawless. John's story is a great reminder that confidence in English doesn't mean speaking without mistakes. It means accepting that mistakes will happen and using them as learning opportunities. It's about focusing on your strengths, like your ability to communicate ideas clearly, and not letting small errors hold you back. Another story I'd like to share is about Sarah, a teacher from the UK who moved to Germany for a job in an international school. At first, Sarah felt nervous about speaking German, especially when she had to talk to her students' parents. One day during a parent-teacher meeting, Sarah found herself talking to a very concerned mother about her child's progress. Sarah felt nervous, unsure of her German vocabulary, but she pushed through. Instead of avoiding the conversation, she asked the mother, "Would you like to have this discussion in English, or is German okay?" The mother smiled and said, "English is fine." I'm happy to help you. Sarah realized something important in that moment. People appreciate honesty and willingness to communicate no matter what language you're speaking. She didn't have to speak German perfectly to help the mother understand the progress of her child. This experience taught Sarah that being open about your language limitations can actually make you more confident. People will often respond positively, and they may even appreciate the effort you're making to communicate in their language. This brings us to an important point. Confidence also comes from being willing to make mistakes and learn from them. Sarah's approach shows us that when we're honest about where we are in our language journey, people are often more understanding and supportive. They're not focused on your accent or vocabulary mistakes. They just want to understand what you're trying to say. When we accept this, we can approach conversations with more confidence because we no longer fear the judgment that we often imagine others have. Now, let's talk about a key part of building confidence: practice. It's easy to think that you'll magically wake up one day and feel confident, but the truth is, confidence comes from consistent practice. This doesn't mean you need to practice English all day, every day, but small, regular practice is the key to improvement. Let's think about Emma, a lawyer who had been practicing English for a few years, but still felt nervous speaking it during meetings. She knew the legal terms well and could write well, but speaking was a different challenge. So Emma decided to set aside just 10 minutes every day to practice speaking. She would record herself talking about different topics and listen to the recordings. At first, she felt uncomfortable listening to her own voice, but over time, she became more used to it. She started speaking more confidently, and eventually, she found that when she participated in meetings, she didn't feel as nervous. What Emma's story shows us is that small, consistent practice can have a big impact. It's the daily effort that builds confidence over time. You don't need to practice for hours each day. Just a few minutes of focused speaking, listening, and reflecting can make a huge difference. So, if you want to build confidence, start by setting aside just a small part of your day to practice. It could be reading aloud, listening to a podcast, and repeating what you hear, or even having short conversations with a friend. Another great way to build confidence is by finding a supportive language partner. Having someone to practice with can make all the difference in your journey. Let's take a look at Peter, a marketing manager from Australia. Peter was living in Spain and struggled with his Spanish. But instead of trying to learn alone, he decided to join a local language exchange group. He found a group of Spanish speakers who wanted to practice their English, and they helped each other. Peter found that practicing with people who were also learning English made him feel more comfortable. They made mistakes together, laughed about them, and supported each other along the way. Having a language partner can make learning more enjoyable and less intimidating. You don't have to feel like you're alone in your struggles, and it can be comforting to know that others are going through the same challenges. Whether it's a language exchange partner, a tutor, or a friend, practicing with others gives you the chance to hear different accents, learn new vocabulary, and gain more confidence in your speaking skills. The final tip I'll share today is about using English in real-life situations. The more you use English in everyday life, the more confident you'll become. This is what Sarah, an entrepreneur from Ireland, discovered when she moved to the US to expand her business. At first, she was nervous about talking to potential clients and suppliers, but she knew that the best way to improve her fluency was to use English in real-life situations. So, Sarah made it a point to speak with clients and suppliers in English, even when it felt uncomfortable. She started to notice that the more she used English, the more confident she felt. The key to Sarah's success was her willingness to practice English in real, everyday situations. Whether she was negotiating a contract or chatting with a customer, she used every opportunity to practice. Over time, this made her feel more confident in her speaking abilities. Using English in real life is a great way to build confidence. because it helps you see how your skills work in practical situations. Whether you're ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, or giving a presentation, using English regularly in these everyday scenarios will help you feel more comfortable and confident when speaking. Remember, confidence doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from practice, embracing mistakes, and being persistent in your learning journey. Whether you're speaking at work, chatting with friends, or ordering a coffee, each opportunity to use English is a step forward in building your confidence. So take a deep breath, speak with confidence, and keep practicing. Your English will improve, and so will your confidence. Earlier, we spoke about the importance of practicing every day and how small efforts can make a big difference in your confidence. But there's something else that plays a big role in becoming more confident in English. Understanding that confidence comes from persistence, not perfection. This is where Andrew, a project manager from the UK, comes in. Andrew worked in a field where he needed to constantly communicate with clients, suppliers, and colleagues across different countries. However, he found himself nervous about speaking English, especially when it came to discussions where he had to explain complex technical concepts. At first, Andrew would freeze up during meetings. He worried about using the wrong words or not being understood. But one day, a colleague of his, Laura, told him something that really resonated with him. Laura said, "Andrew, no one expects you to be perfect. They care about understanding your ideas. Speak from the heart, and if you make a mistake, don't worry, just correct it and move on." Andrew took her advice to heart and started focusing, less on perfection and more on the message he wanted to communicate. He practiced speaking about technical concepts in English, even when it was uncomfortable, and made sure to stay calm when he stumbled over words. Over time, Andrew found that his nerves started to fade. By continuing to practice and reminding himself that people were interested in his ideas, not just his English, his confidence grew. Andrew's story is a great reminder that when you stop focusing on being perfect and focus on your message, you naturally become more confident. Every mistake became an opportunity to learn, and every conversation was a chance to improve his skills. But there's another side to building confidence that I want to dive into: developing a positive mindset toward learning. It's easy to get discouraged, especially when things aren't going as quickly as you'd like. You may think, why am I still making mistakes after all this time? But the truth is, learning a language is a process. The key is to stay positive and patient with yourself, even when it feels like progress is slow. Let's talk about Rachel, a software developer from New York, who faced a similar challenge. Rachel had been learning English for years and could read and write it quite well. However, speaking was still a struggle, and she felt frustrated whenever she couldn't express herself clearly. One day, Rachel attended a meeting where she had to present a new project. She practiced her presentation multiple times before the meeting, but when she finally spoke in front of the group, she made a few mistakes. Afterward, she felt disappointed and thought about quitting her practice. But Rachel's colleague, Ethan, who had been learning English too, gave her some great advice. He said, "Rachel, it's okay to make mistakes. I still make them all the time, but I've learned that each mistake teaches me something valuable. Instead of focusing on what went wrong, think about what you did right." Rachel took Ethan's advice to heart and changed the way she looked at her progress. Instead of viewing her mistakes as failures, she began to see them as opportunities to improve. With this new mindset, Rachel felt more motivated to continue practicing. Over time, Rachel started feeling more confident in her speaking abilities. She didn't stop learning just because she made mistakes. She embraced those mistakes and kept practicing. Eventually, her confidence in her speaking abilities grew so much that she was able to lead important presentations with ease. Rachel's story teaches us that confidence in English comes from having a positive mindset. Instead of being discouraged by mistakes, view them as a normal part of learning. Embrace each mistake as an opportunity to get better. The more positive and patient you are with yourself, the more confident you'll feel. This brings us to the idea of setting small, achievable goals to help boost your confidence. Setting goals gives you a clear direction and keeps you focused on progress. Let me tell you about Michael, a businessman from Australia who took this approach. Michael had been studying English for a while, but he often felt overwhelmed by how much more he needed to learn. One day, he decided to set small goals for himself, such as learning 5 new words every day or practicing speaking for 15 minutes every morning. Each time he met his goal, he felt a sense of accomplishment, and his confidence grew. Michael didn't focus on mastering everything at once. He took it step by step. This strategy worked wonders for Michael. By focusing on small, achievable goals, he built his confidence little by little. Over time, those small wins added up, and Michael felt much more confident when speaking English at work. His approach shows us that breaking down the language learning process into smaller steps makes it less overwhelming and more manageable. It's not about mastering everything at once, but about making steady progress. So, when you're feeling unsure about your English, set small goals and celebrate your achievements along the way. Another effective way to build confidence is by surrounding yourself with supportive people who encourage you to speak. This can make a huge difference in your language journey. Let's talk about Emily, a marketing professional from the US who lived in a non-English speaking country for a few years. Emily often felt shy when speaking in English, especially because she was afraid of making mistakes. But Emily's friends were always supportive and patient with her. One day, Emily decided to join a local group of English learners who met weekly to practice speaking. Each time they met, the group encouraged each other to speak, no matter what level they were at. In these sessions, Emily realized that the people in her group weren't judging her. They were there to learn, just like she was. This helped Emily feel more comfortable speaking and allowed her to gradually become more confident. Eventually, Emily found herself speaking more freely in both social and professional settings. She wasn't worried about making mistakes anymore because she knew that everyone in the group and her friends were there to support her. What Emily's story teaches us is that having a community of people who encourage you to speak English can play a key role in building confidence. When you feel supported by others, it's easier to take risks and speak without the fear of judgment. Whether it's through a language exchange group, online forums, or supportive friends and family, being part of a community can give you the confidence boost you need. I also want to mention the importance of using English every day, even in small ways. The more you use English in your daily life, the more natural it will feel and the more confident you'll become. Take James, for example. James, a teacher from London, used to feel nervous about speaking English during casual conversations with strangers. But one day, he decided to challenge himself by making small talk with people he met throughout his day. Whether it was asking for directions, chatting with a cashier, or talking to someone on the bus, James made an effort to use English in his everyday interactions. As James practiced, he became more confident. At first, it felt awkward, but over time, these daily conversations helped him become more comfortable with speaking. Using English in real life is a great way to practice fluency because it forces you to think on your feet. It also helps you get used to different accents and speaking styles, which will improve your confidence over time. So, take a page from James's book and look for opportunities to use English in your everyday life. Whether you're shopping, traveling, or even just chatting with a friend, these small interactions are key to building your fluency and confidence. Through these stories and examples, I hope you can see that building confidence in English isn't something that happens overnight. It's a gradual process that requires patience, practice, and a positive mindset. As you continue practicing, remember that mistakes are part of the learning process, and they don't define your abilities. Stay persistent, focus on small goals, and surround yourself with supportive people. Every step you take will bring you closer to feeling confident in your English. Earlier, we talked about setting small goals, embracing mistakes, and practicing every day. Now, let's take a closer look at how we can build more confidence when it comes to speaking English in professional settings. This is something a lot of learners struggle with because there's often a pressure to be perfect in front of colleagues or clients. But as we saw with Michael, who set small goals to improve his fluency, breaking things down and focusing on one step at a time is key. Let me introduce you to Peter, a businessman from London who had to make presentations in English regularly. Peter had been working in an international company for a few years, but his English wasn't as strong as he wanted it to be. He used to feel nervous whenever he had to give a speech, even if it was just to a small group of colleagues. But Peter decided to start practicing his public speaking skills in English in a simple way. He began recording himself. Every day, Peter would speak about a random topic for 5 minutes, just as if he was presenting in front of an audience. At first, it felt awkward. Peter would listen to his recordings and hear all the mistakes, and he was discouraged. But instead of quitting, he started to focus on one thing he could improve each time. On Monday, he focused on pronunciation. On Tuesday, it was about speaking slowly and clearly. By the end of the week, he had made small improvements that boosted his confidence. One of the biggest changes for Peter was realizing that speaking wasn't about perfection, it was about communication. As long as his ideas were clear, he didn't need to worry about minor mistakes. So, Peter's experience teaches us a very important lesson. Regular practice is critical for building confidence, but so is the willingness to focus on specific areas you want to improve. It's not necessary to try and fix everything at once. Just tackle one thing at a time, and your confidence will increase as a result. Practicing public speaking in English by recording yourself can be a great way to see your progress and identify areas where you can improve. Now, while we're talking about practice, let's also talk about how important it is to practice English in different contexts. This brings us to Sarah, a teacher from the United States who taught English as a second language abroad. Sarah had been teaching English in a non-English speaking country for several years, but she still felt a bit shy when it came to using English in informal situations, like chatting with friends or ordering food at a restaurant. Sarah often found herself reverting to her native language because it felt more comfortable. One day, Sarah decided to challenge herself by only speaking English during her weekend activities. Whether it was going out for coffee with friends or going grocery shopping, she made sure to use only English. At first, this made her nervous because she was worried about not being able to understand everything or not expressing herself correctly. But over time, Sarah started to feel more at ease using English in these everyday situations. What helped her the most was accepting that making mistakes in informal situations was perfectly okay and that people were patient with her. Through this challenge, Sarah's confidence grew. She realized that to truly improve her fluency, she needed to use English in all areas of her life, not just in formal or work-related situations. Everyday conversations, even simple ones like asking for directions or talking about the weather, helped Sarah practice her speaking and comprehension. It also gave her the confidence to speak with her friends and colleagues without worrying about being perfect. Sarah's story is a great example of how you can build your confidence by making English a part of your daily life. Start small and look for opportunities to use English in real-life situations. Whether you're speaking with a colleague, asking for help in a store, or even chatting with a neighbor, these small conversations will help you gain fluency and confidence in speaking English. But building confidence isn't only about speaking. It's also important to feel confident when writing in English. Writing is often overlooked by language learners who focus mainly on speaking and listening. However, being able to express yourself clearly in writing is just as important as speaking fluently, and it can help you feel more confident overall. Take James, a software developer from Canada who felt comfortable speaking English but struggled when it came to writing emails at work. He often found himself spending too much time correcting his grammar or worrying about his sentence structure. James decided to make writing a daily habit. Every evening, he would write about his day in English. It could be as simple as describing his daily tasks or writing a short story. James didn't worry too much about grammar or perfecting his writing at first. His goal was to write regularly and express his thoughts without overthinking it. Over time, James became more comfortable writing in English. The practice helped him improve his vocabulary, sentence structure, and overall fluency in writing. Through James' experience, we can see that writing is another great way to build confidence. By setting aside time each day to write in English, you'll start to notice improvements in both your writing and speaking skills. Plus, writing regularly helps you organize your thoughts and express yourself more clearly. Now, let's talk about the importance of listening. This is a skill that many English learners overlook, but it's just as essential as speaking and writing. The more you listen to English, the easier it will be for you to understand others and to respond confidently. Let's look at Emma, a college student from Birmingham who faced this challenge. Emma often felt nervous during group discussions because she had trouble understanding what others were saying, especially when they spoke quickly or used informal expressions. One day, Emma decided to listen to more English content to improve her listening skills. She started by watching podcasts, listening to TED Talks, and even watching English language news reports. Emma didn't focus on understanding everything perfectly. Instead, she listened to get the general idea of what was being said. She found that as she listened more, her ability to understand different accents and speaking styles improved. She also noticed that she was able to pick up on idiomatic expressions and slang that people used in everyday conversation. By practicing her listening skills, Emma became more confident in group discussions. She didn't get discouraged when she didn't understand everything at first. Instead, she kept practicing and gradually improved. Emma's experience shows us that listening is a crucial skill for building confidence. The more you listen, the more natural your understanding of the language becomes. This allows you to respond confidently in conversations without hesitating too much. So, make time to listen to English content daily, and over time, you'll notice a big difference in your fluency and confidence. In the same vein, let's talk about the importance of learning from real-life experiences. Real-life situations provide a great opportunity to practice English in an authentic context, which helps to improve both your listening and speaking skills. Take David, a manager from Manchester, who moved to a foreign country for work. David initially struggled with his confidence in speaking English, especially when interacting with locals in social settings. But he made a conscious decision to embrace these real-life situations as learning experiences. David would visit local cafes, join community events, and attend networking events where he could practice English with native speakers. He made sure to listen attentively to how people spoke and what expressions they used. Over time, David found that he was able to hold conversations more naturally, without the fear of making mistakes. His confidence grew because he was practicing English in real-life contexts, which gave him the ability to understand the language as it was used in everyday situations. David's story is a powerful reminder that real-life experiences provide the best learning opportunities. When you put yourself in situations where you have to use English, you not only improve your fluency, but also gain the confidence that comes with speaking naturally. So far, we've covered a variety of ways to build your confidence, from setting small goals to using English in real-life situations. But it's also important to remember that progress takes time. Be patient with yourself. Confidence doesn't appear overnight. It's something that builds slowly with consistent practice. Whether you're speaking, listening, writing, or reading, every effort you make gets you one step closer to fluency. Keep practicing, and with each step, your confidence will continue to grow. One of the most important aspects of learning any language is the ability to connect it to your daily life. For instance, many learners feel hesitant about speaking with strangers in English, especially when they're not in a formal setting. But, as we've seen before, real-life experiences are key. Now, let's look at Tom, a software engineer from Bristol, who had to travel to the United States for a work conference. Tom felt nervous because his colleagues would be speaking English in fast-paced conversations, and he was worried about keeping up. When Tom arrived in the U.S., he didn't let his fear of speaking hold him back. Instead of avoiding conversations, he decided to dive in. At the conference, Tom made a point of interacting with as many people as possible. He started with simple greetings like, "Hi, I'm Tom. Where are you from?" He focused on listening carefully and repeating back what people said to confirm his understanding. For example, if someone mentioned a particular city, Tom would say, "So, you're from Boston, right?" This helped him make sure he understood, and it gave him a moment to process and organize his thoughts before responding. By the end of the conference, Tom felt much more confident. He realized that the more he spoke, the easier it became to join conversations. Tom's story shows us that confidence is built by actively engaging with others in English, even when you're outside of your comfort zone. His progress didn't happen overnight, but over the days and weeks he practiced speaking, he gradually gained more fluency. In addition to speaking, listening also plays a vital role in improving your confidence. Let's look at Anna, a business consultant from Edinburgh who had lived in a country where English wasn't the first language. Even though she had learned English in school, she felt unsure about understanding native speakers in professional settings. She would often find herself straining to catch every word in meetings or during business calls. This made her feel less confident in speaking and even discouraged her from participating in discussions. But Anna decided to do something about it. She started listening to podcasts and audiobooks in English during her daily commute to work. She focused on different accents, such as American, British, and Australian, so she could become accustomed to various speech patterns. Anna didn't just listen passively. She took notes, jotted down new words or expressions, and tried using them in her conversations. Over time, Anna noticed that she was able to follow along with meetings much better. Her understanding of different accents improved, and she became more confident in her ability to speak up when she had something to contribute. One of the key takeaways from Anna's experience is that improving your listening skills directly impacts your confidence. The more you listen, the more you get used to the natural flow of English, and it becomes easier to keep up with conversations. So, just like Anna, you can improve your listening by exposing yourself to a variety of real-world English content, whether it's podcasts, news reports, or even casual conversations with native speakers. But listening is not just about passive exposure. It's about practicing active listening. That means paying attention to not just the words, but also the tone, stress, and rhythm of the language. Active listening helps you pick up on subtle cues, like how people emphasize certain words to express emotions or intentions. For example, when someone says, "I can't believe it," with excitement, you'll understand that they're surprised or thrilled. Being able to pick up these cues adds depth to your understanding and helps you respond in a more natural and confident way. Now, let's talk about how developing confidence in writing can help you improve your overall language skills. Writing is a skill that often goes unnoticed, but is just as important as speaking. It allows you to organize your thoughts and express yourself clearly, which can also help with your speaking skills. Take Michael, an accountant from London, who felt that writing was one of his weaker skills. He often hesitated to send emails or write reports because he was unsure of his grammar and sentence structure. Michael knew that in his line of work, clear written communication was essential, so he decided to focus on improving his writing. Michael made writing a part of his daily routine. He started by writing short journal entries in English, reflecting on his day or summarizing what he learned. At first, his writing was simple, but as he continued, he began to experiment with more complex sentence structures. Michael also made use of online resources, like grammar-checking tools and vocabulary-building apps, which helped him refine his writing over time. He wasn't aiming for perfection, he just wanted to improve little by little. A few months later, Michael noticed a big difference in his writing. His emails at work became clearer, and he no longer spent hours editing every sentence. He became more confident in expressing his ideas in writing, and that confidence carried over into his spoken English. Writing regularly helped him understand grammar rules and sentence structures better, which in turn improved his fluency in both writing and speaking. This story shows us how writing can help reinforce your language skills. It's not just about learning vocabulary or grammar. It's about practicing how to express yourself in an organized way. You don't need to write long essays every day, but by making writing a habit, you'll slowly improve your ability to communicate more effectively in English. Speaking of habits, let's discuss how consistency is key to building confidence. Many learners make the mistake of thinking they can improve their English by only practicing once in a while. But in reality, consistency is what drives progress. Let's take a look at James, a lawyer from Manchester, who wanted to improve his speaking and writing skills. He used to practice only on weekends when he had more free time, but he realized that this wasn't enough to see real improvement. So James made a commitment to practice English every day. He set aside 30 minutes in the morning to write a few paragraphs in English about his plans for the day. In the evening, he spent another 30 minutes listening to English podcasts. Over time, James noticed that his fluency began to improve, even in the short time he dedicated to learning. By practicing every day, even for just a little bit, he built the confidence he needed to communicate more effectively in his professional and personal life. James's experience highlights the importance of consistency. When you make English a regular part of your day, you'll see gradual improvement, and before you know it, you'll feel much more confident in your abilities. It's not about spending hours every day. It's about making language practice a part of your routine. One of the most important things to remember is that confidence doesn't come from avoiding mistakes. It comes from accepting them and using them as opportunities to learn. When you stop fearing mistakes, you open yourself up to more growth. Remember Tom, who had to give presentations in English at the work conference? He didn't let the fear of making a mistake stop him from engaging in conversations. Similarly, Anna, who worked on her listening skills, didn't feel discouraged when she didn't understand everything at first. Both of these stories show that confidence is built through consistent practice and embracing challenges, not by avoiding them. When you stop focusing on perfection and start focusing on progress, you'll find that building confidence in English becomes much easier. Whether you're speaking, writing, or listening, every effort you make brings you closer to fluency. So keep pushing yourself to practice every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. Every step counts. By now, you've heard some great examples of people who've built their confidence in English through consistent practice, active listening, and embracing mistakes. But don't forget, one of the most powerful ways to continue improving your English is by putting yourself in situations where you have to use the language in real-life contexts, like Peter at his work conference, Sarah at her local cafe, or David at a community event. These everyday situations provide the best opportunities to practice your English and build your confidence. So, what can you take away from these stories? Confidence in English doesn't happen instantly, but with regular practice, dedication, and a willingness to make mistakes, you'll find that your skills improve over time. Don't rush the process. Focus on the small steps you can take each day to improve your speaking, listening, writing, and reading. Remember, every effort you make brings you one step closer to your goal. Building confidence in English is a step-by-step journey that requires dedication, patience, and consistent practice. So far, we've discussed a few ways to boost your confidence, like actively engaging in conversations, improving your listening skills, and writing regularly. Let's dive deeper into more strategies that can help you overcome common obstacles and build the self-assurance needed to communicate effectively in English. First, it's important to understand that building confidence isn't just about speaking more. It's also about thinking more in English. Many learners focus too much on translating everything from their native language to English. But the more you start thinking in English, the more natural it becomes to speak without having to pause and search for the right words. Take Laura, for instance, a teacher from Liverpool. She struggled with fluency because she always translated from her native language to English in her head. This made her hesitant during conversations and often left her feeling unsure of herself. One day, Laura decided to focus on thinking in English during her everyday activities. She started by narrating her day to herself in English. For example, when she was cooking, she'd think, "Now I'm chopping the vegetables. I need to boil the water." This helped her connect English with her daily routine and reduce the need to translate. She also watched English videos with subtitles, but she didn't read the subtitles word for word. Instead, she focused on understanding the meaning of the sentences and tried to think in English as the conversation was happening. Over time, Laura found that her speech became faster and more fluid, and she no longer had to pause to translate. In her mind, her confidence grew because she wasn't constantly switching between languages in her head. So, if you find yourself struggling to speak confidently, try thinking in English as much as possible. Whether you're alone or with others, try to form sentences in English in your mind before you say them. The more you do this, the more natural it will become to think and speak in English. Another powerful strategy for building confidence is learning how to handle mistakes with ease. Often, learners are afraid of making mistakes, but the truth is that mistakes are an essential part of learning any language. They're not something to avoid. They're opportunities to learn and grow. Let's take a look at Ben, a marketing professional from Oxford. He was terrified of making mistakes in meetings with international clients because he didn't want to sound unprofessional. This fear of making mistakes held him back from speaking up during discussions, even when he had valuable input. One day, Ben decided to change his mindset. Instead of seeing mistakes as failures, he started viewing them as a chance to improve. He realized that most native speakers make mistakes too, and it's completely normal. The important thing is how you recover from them. For example, during one meeting, Ben accidentally said there instead of there. But instead of stressing out, he quickly corrected himself and continued speaking. He even joked about it, saying, "Oops, I guess my English is still a work in progress." His colleagues appreciated his honesty and sense of humor, and this helped Ben feel less anxious about making mistakes. Over time, his fear of speaking in English began to disappear because he embraced his mistakes rather than feared them. By learning to laugh at yourself and correct errors without feeling ashamed, you can reduce the pressure you place on yourself to be perfect. Mistakes are simply part of the process, and they don't define your ability to communicate in English. Ben's story shows that confidence grows when you accept mistakes as part of your learning journey. So don't be afraid to make errors. Embrace them and move forward. Confidence also comes from setting small, achievable goals. If you try to improve your English all at once, it can feel overwhelming. Instead, break your learning process down into smaller goals. For example, focus on mastering a specific skill, like pronunciation, or learning 5 new words each day. As you accomplish these goals, you'll feel a sense of achievement that will boost your confidence. Take Sarah, a nurse from Manchester, who wanted to improve her pronunciation. Instead of worrying about speaking perfect English, she decided to focus on one sound that was difficult for her to pronounce. Every day, Sarah practiced the hth sound, which is common in English but hard for many learners. She used videos and language apps to help her, and she even practiced saying words like think, through, and thirsty in front of a mirror. Within a few weeks, Sarah noticed a huge improvement in her pronunciation, and her confidence grew. This gave her the motivation to keep going and tackle other aspects of her English skills. By breaking down your goals and focusing on one skill at a time, you can avoid feeling overwhelmed. Every small achievement will make you more confident, and over time, you'll see significant improvements in your English abilities. Another great way to build confidence is by surrounding yourself with people who support and encourage you. Having a strong support system can make a huge difference in your language learning journey. Let's talk about David, an engineer from London, who joined an English language group at his local community center. At first, David was hesitant to speak because he was afraid of making mistakes in front of others. But his fellow group members, who were all learners just like him, created a positive environment where everyone encouraged each other. They practiced speaking English together, corrected each other's mistakes gently, and celebrated each other's progress. David found that the more he practiced with others, the more comfortable he became. The group gave him a safe space to make mistakes and learn from them. He also gained valuable feedback from his peers, which helped him identify areas where he could improve. By the end of the course, David felt much more confident speaking English, and his fluency improved significantly. This story highlights the importance of finding a community of learners who can help you stay motivated. Whether you join a language exchange group, an online forum, or attend classes, surrounding yourself with supportive people who are on the same path will encourage you to keep going. The more you practice with others, the more you'll feel at ease when speaking English. It's also important to take care of your mental well-being while learning a new language. Many learners feel frustrated or discouraged when they don't see immediate progress, but it's crucial to remember that language learning is a marathon, not a sprint. If you're feeling overwhelmed, it might be helpful to take a step back and remind yourself of your progress. Think about how far you've come since you first started learning English. Reflect on the moments when you communicated effectively in English, whether it was during a simple conversation or when you understood something in a podcast or movie. Celebrate those small wins because they're a sign that your hard work is paying off. Mark, a teacher from Cambridge, experienced this struggle when he was trying to improve his speaking fluency. At times, he felt like he wasn't making progress fast enough, especially when compared to other learners. But instead of giving up, Mark decided to focus on his own personal growth rather than comparing himself to others. He started keeping a journal of his English learning journey where he wrote about his daily practice and any challenges he faced. When he looked back at his journal a few months later, he was amazed at how much he had improved. This positive reinforcement kept him motivated and confident in his abilities. Taking care of your mental health and focusing on your progress rather than your setbacks is key to maintaining confidence as you learn. If you feel stuck, remind yourself that language learning is a process, and every step counts. Celebrate your small victories, and don't be too hard on yourself when things aren't going as fast as you'd like. Finally, to build confidence. In English, it's crucial to embrace variety in your learning methods. Don't limit yourself to just one way of practicing. Change things up and explore different resources, like podcasts, news articles, conversation partners, or language apps. Each of these methods offers something unique that can help improve your English skills. And the more variety you incorporate, the more enjoyable the process becomes. Take Emma, a student from Birmingham, who started learning English through textbooks. She felt like her progress was slow, and she wasn't having as much fun with the material. But once she started listening to English podcasts, reading news stories, and even watching short videos on YouTube, she found that learning became more engaging. Emma even started listening to interviews with native speakers in different fields to learn new vocabulary related to her interests. By mixing up her study routine, she kept things fresh and exciting, which helped her stay motivated and confident. Changing your routine and incorporating different learning tools can make a huge difference in your language learning experience. So, whether you prefer listening, reading, speaking, or writing, find ways to enjoy each method and keep your learning process dynamic. When it comes to improving your fluency and confidence in English, remember that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. Everyone learns differently, and that's okay. The key is to stay patient, embrace the challenges, and trust that your efforts will lead to progress. Whether it's through speaking with others, writing regularly, listening to podcasts, or simply thinking in English, you're taking active steps toward fluency. Keep practicing, stay consistent, and most importantly, believe in yourself, because you've got this. One of the most important things to understand when building confidence in English is that it's okay to start small. You don't need to speak perfectly right away, and it's natural to feel nervous when you're first starting out. Let's take a look at Liam, a young professional from Bristol. When Liam first started learning English, he would get nervous even speaking with friends or family members. He didn't want to make mistakes, and this fear held him back from practicing. His goal was to be fluent right away, but he soon realized that this wasn't realistic. Liam decided to start with small steps instead of putting pressure on himself to be perfect. He began by speaking English in very low-stress situations. For example, when he went to the store, he practiced simple phrases like, "How much is this?" or "Can I pay with my card?" These small interactions allowed him to gain more confidence without feeling overwhelmed. Over time, Liam noticed that these simple exchanges became easier, and he could start using more complex sentences. His confidence grew, and he eventually felt comfortable speaking with colleagues and clients at work. The key takeaway here is to start small. Don't expect yourself to be perfect right away. Celebrate your progress, even if it's just a short conversation or using a new phrase. Each small victory will help build your confidence over time. Another powerful way to build confidence is by immersing yourself in the language. Being around English as much as possible helps you get used to the flow and rhythm of the language, making it easier to speak without hesitation. For example, let's talk about Sarah, a writer from London. Sarah had been learning English for several years, but she struggled to use it in her writing and speaking. She would often second-guess herself and worry about grammar mistakes. However, when Sarah decided to immerse herself in English, everything changed. She began listening to podcasts, watching interviews, and reading articles in English every day. Sarah didn't just focus on grammar rules or vocabulary, she paid attention to the way native speakers phrased their sentences, their tone of voice, and how they expressed ideas naturally. She also started writing in English every day, keeping a journal of her thoughts and ideas. At first, her writing was filled with errors, but she didn't mind. The important thing was that she was practicing consistently, and this immersion helped her improve her fluency. Over time, Sarah's writing became smoother, and her speaking became more confident. This story shows that immersion doesn't mean you have to move to an English-speaking country. You can immerse yourself in the language by surrounding yourself with English content in your daily life. Whether it's watching news videos, reading books or blogs, or listening to music or podcasts, the more you expose yourself to English, the easier it will be to improve your speaking and writing skills. By incorporating English into your daily routine, you're not only building confidence, but you're also making the language feel like a natural part of your life. Another strategy that can significantly improve your fluency is by expanding your vocabulary. The more words you know, the easier it is to express yourself clearly and confidently. However, expanding your vocabulary doesn't mean memorizing long lists of words. It's about learning words and phrases in context. Take Mark, a software developer from Manchester. Mark was always worried about his vocabulary because he felt like he didn't know enough words to express himself fully in English. He would often find himself hesitating when trying to explain technical terms to his colleagues. To address this, Mark decided to focus on learning words and phrases that were relevant to his daily life and work. He would learn new vocabulary from books, podcasts, and conversations that related to his field. Instead of simply memorizing the meaning of words, he made an effort to understand how they were used in sentences. He also practiced using them in his own conversations. Over time, Mark found that his vocabulary grew, and he was able to speak more clearly and confidently without worrying about finding the right words. This approach to vocabulary learning is effective because it connects new words to real-life situations. When you learn vocabulary in context, it becomes easier to remember and use it naturally in your conversations and writing. Mark's experience shows that building your vocabulary in a focused way can make a big difference in your confidence level. Another important tip is to practice active listening. Often, we focus too much on speaking and forget the importance of listening. Active listening helps you understand how native speakers structure their sentences and use different expressions. It also helps you become more comfortable with the natural flow of conversation. Take Julia, a business consultant from York. Julia had always struggled to understand native speakers in meetings, and this affected her confidence in participating in discussions. To improve her listening skills, Julia started practicing active listening every day. She would listen to podcasts and interviews on topics she was interested in, pausing to repeat phrases or words that she found difficult to understand. She also tried to predict what the speaker would say next, which helped her improve her comprehension skills. Julia made a habit of listening to English content at various speeds, sometimes slowing it down, other times speeding it up to challenge herself. Over time, Julia found that her understanding of spoken English improved significantly. She felt more confident participating in meetings because she could understand her colleagues and clients better, even when they spoke quickly. Active listening helped her feel more comfortable in conversations and boosted her speaking confidence. If you want to build confidence in speaking and writing, consider incorporating more active listening into your practice routine. Listen to podcasts, audiobooks, or conversations, and pay attention to how speakers use the language. Try to mimic their intonation and rhythm, and practice repeating what you hear. The more you listen actively, the easier it will become to speak confidently in real-life situations. Another strategy that can boost your confidence is creating a language routine. Establishing a routine gives structure to your learning and makes it easier to stay consistent. Let's look at Anna, a college student from Nottingham. Anna struggled with staying consistent with her English learning, often skipping days or not following through with her study plans. This lack of consistency made her feel unsure of her progress, and it affected her confidence. To address this, Anna decided to create a daily learning routine. Every morning, she would spend 30 minutes reading in English, and in the evening, she would watch a short video in English while taking notes on new words. By following this routine every day, Anna built a habit of practicing English regularly, and her progress became noticeable. As she saw improvements in her speaking and writing, her confidence grew. The routine helped her stay focused and motivated. Creating a learning routine can make your progress feel more structured, and it ensures that you're consistently improving. Whether it's reading, writing, speaking, or listening, dedicating a specific time to practice each day will help you make steady progress and feel more confident in your abilities. Finally, remember that confidence is a mindset. The way you view yourself as a learner can greatly influence your confidence level. If you constantly tell yourself that you're not good enough or that you'll never be fluent, you're likely to feel discouraged. But if you adopt a positive mindset, you can start seeing challenges as opportunities to improve. Think about James, a graphic designer from Edinburgh, who used to doubt his ability to speak English confidently. He often thought that his accent was a barrier, and this made him shy away from speaking. One day, James realized that his accent was part of what made him unique, and he began to embrace it. He stopped focusing on being perfect and started focusing on being clear and effective in his communication. By changing his mindset, James felt more comfortable speaking and stopped fearing judgment. His confidence grew, and he was able to speak English more naturally, even in professional settings. Adopting a positive mindset is one of the most powerful ways to build confidence in English. Focus on your strengths, embrace challenges as learning experiences, and believe that you're capable of improving. The more you believe in yourself, the more confident you will become in your English abilities. Building confidence in English doesn't happen overnight, but with consistent effort, practice, and the right mindset, you'll gradually feel more comfortable and fluent. Whether it's through small steps, immersion, vocabulary expansion, active listening, or creating a routine, each strategy you implement will bring you closer to your goal of fluency. Keep practicing, stay positive, and remember that every mistake is just another step toward becoming a more confident English speaker. Keep going, and you'll see the progress you've worked so hard for. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. I hope these stories and strategies have given you some useful insights into how you can build confidence in English. Remember, confidence doesn't come instantly. It's a result of consistent practice, embracing mistakes, focusing on your strengths, and preparing for success. Take small steps every day, and you'll see gradual improvement that adds up over time. Before we finish, I want to remind you to press that like button if you found this episode helpful. And if you're new to the English Pod community, don't forget to subscribe so you can stay updated with all our future content. We upload new episodes regularly, aimed at helping you improve your English skills. Whether it's speaking, writing, listening, or understanding the culture around you, keep practicing, stay confident, and as always, thank you for listening. I'm Blake, and I'll see you in the next episode. Happy learning!